A man dressed as a clown walks into a children's hospital. Kids smile. Parents feel safe. He makes balloon animals. He tells jokes. Everyone thinks he is wonderful. A pillar of the community. A successful businessman. A friend to politicians. Someone you would trust with your children. But underneath his house, in the dark crawl space where nobody looks, there is evidence of terrible crimes. 26 victims. Young men. Teenage boys. All hidden in the dirt. Some were placed on top of each other because he ran out of space. And nobody suspected a thing. This is not a horror movie. This is real. This happened in Chicago in the 1970s. In a regular neighborhood where families lived normal lives. Where people went to work every morning and came home every evening. Where a dangerous person hid behind a smile and a clown costume. 33 young men lost their lives. Most of them were never reported missing. The ones who were dismissed as runaways. Their families begged the police to investigate. But nobody listened. Because how could a respectable businessman be dangerous? How could someone who entertains children at birthday parties be capable of such crimes? The answer is terrifying. Because this man was not hiding. He was living in plain sight. He had dinner parties. He knew politicians. He was photographed with the First Lady. He was active in his community. He seemed so normal that even when police came to his door multiple times, they never suspected what was really happening inside. What makes this story even more disturbing is how many chances there were to stop him. How many times did the police almost catch him but let him go? How many victims could have been saved if someone had just looked a little deeper? If someone had questioned his excuses? If someone had searched his house sooner? But they did not. And for years, young men kept disappearing. One after another. Sometimes two in the same night. Their families waited for them to come home. They reported them missing. They called the police over and over. But in the 1970s, missing young men were not a priority. Especially if they were poor. Especially if they were involved in risky behavior. Especially if they did not fit the image of the perfect victim. This person knew that. He understood how society worked. He knew which victims nobody would look for. He knew how to appear trustworthy. He knew exactly what to say to the police. And he used that knowledge to become one of the most prolific criminals in American history. The story you are about to hear will shock you. Not just because of the serious crimes, but because of how easy it was for this man to fool everyone. How he walked among us. How he shook hands with respected people. How he made children laugh while evidence of his crimes remained hidden under his floor. John Wayne Gacy was born in Chicago in 1942. From outside, his family seemed normal. Working class. Nothing unusual. But inside the home, things were different. His father was a violent person who mistreated him regularly. Called him weak. Called him stupid. Nothing young John did was ever good enough. He grew up desperate for approval. Desperate to prove he was successful. Desperate to show everyone he was important. And on the surface, he succeeded. He became a businessman. He got married. He had a family. He joined community organizations. He became politically active. Everything looked perfect from outside. But there was a darkness nobody could see. In 1968, Gacy was living in Iowa, managing restaurants for his father-in-law. He had a wife and 2 children, a good job, a nice life. But he was also doing something terrible. He was harming teenage boys who worked for him. One of these boys finally told the police. Gacy was arrested and charged. When he went to trial, He was convicted and sentenced to 10 years in prison, but he only served 18 months, less than 2 years, for destroying a young person's life. Then he was released, free to start again, free to move to a new place where nobody knew his past. He moved to Chicago and settled in Norwood Park, a quiet suburban neighborhood. He started a construction company called PDM Contractors. He married again. He seemed to be living a normal life. He even created a clown character named Pogo. He would dress up and perform at children's parties and hospitals. People loved him. They thought he was generous, kind, a good man giving back to his community. But behind closed doors, something very different was happening. Gacy had discovered that young men were easy targets, boys looking for work, teenagers who needed money, runaways who nobody would miss. He would offer them jobs at his construction company, promise them good pay, then he would bring them to his house. His method was always similar: get them comfortable, offer them drinks with substances mixed in, then show them a magic trick with handcuffs. He would put the handcuffs on himself first, show them how easy it was, then offer to let them try. Once the handcuffs were on, the victim was trapped, and the terrible situation would begin. What happened next was too horrible to describe in detail. Hours of suffering, harm beyond imagination. And when Gacy was finished, he would end their lives, usually through strangulation with rope or his hands. And then he would move their remains down to the crawl space under his house and hide them in the dirt. His first victim was Timothy McCoy in 1972, a 16-year-old boy passing through Chicago. Gacy met him at the bus station, offered him a place to stay. The boy never made it home, but nobody connected his disappearance to Gacy. Why would they? Gacy was just a friendly stranger who offered help. Over the next 6 years, Gacy committed these crimes again and again. He developed a system, a pattern. He knew exactly what type of victim to choose. Boys who were vulnerable, boys who were alone, boys who nobody would immediately report missing. He was careful, he was methodical, and he was confident he would never get caught. In 1975, an 18-year-old named Johnny Butkovich came to Gacy's house. Johnny had worked for Gacy's construction company, but Gacy had not paid him. Johnny was angry. He demanded his money. They argued for hours. Finally, Johnny left. But he never made it home. His car was found abandoned just blocks away with his wallet and money still inside. Johnny's father immediately suspected something was wrong. He called the police. He told them about the argument with Gacy. He begged them to investigate. But police talked to Gacy and believed his story. Gacy said Johnny had left his house just fine. He had witnesses who saw the boy leave. Where he went after that was a mystery. Police closed the case. They dismissed it as a runaway situation. If they had searched Gacy's house then, they would have found Johnny's remains in the garage. They would have found other victims in the crawl space. They would have stopped Gacy before he could harm 28 more people. But they did not search. They believed him. And Johnny's family was left with questions that would haunt them for years. Young men kept disappearing, one after another. Some were Gacy's employees. Some were boys he met at bus stations. Some were just walking down the street when Gacy pulled up in his black car and offered them a ride. Most were never reported missing, the ones who were treated as runaways. Police had no idea these cases were connected, no idea a dangerous person was operating in their city. Then, in 1977, something happened that should have stopped Gacy forever. A 27-year-old man named Jeffrey Rignall was walking home when Gacy pulled up beside him. Gacy offered him substances, invited him to get in the car. As soon as Rignall got in, Gacy attacked him. He put a cloth soaked with chloroform over his face. Rignall passed out. When he woke up, he was in Gacy's house, restrained with handcuffs. For hours, Gacy harmed him, used chloroform to knock him out over and over. Each time Rignall regained consciousness, the terrible situation started again. Finally, inexplicably, Gacy let him go. He left him in a park, alive but badly injured. Rignall went straight to the police. He told them everything. He described what happened. He described Gacy's car, a black Oldsmobile. He even remembered seeing an expressway exit sign during the drive. Police believed his story, but without a name or address, they said there was nothing they could do. Rignall was furious. He decided to find his attacker himself. He went to the expressway exit he remembered, and he waited. Day after day, week after week, he watched thousands of cars pass by. Most people would have given up, but Rignall was determined. And finally, after months of searching, he saw it. The black Oldsmobile, the same car. He followed it to Norwood Park. I watched it pull into a driveway at 8213 Summerdale Avenue. Rignall had found his attacker. He went back to police with the address and license plate number. Police identified the owner, John Wayne Gacy. When they checked his record, they found his conviction from Iowa, harm to a minor. This was serious. But there was a problem. So much time had passed that physical evidence was gone. It was Rignall's word against Gacy's. A respected businessman against someone who admitted to being different in the 1970s. Gacy was charged only with battery, a minor offense. The fine was just $100. No jail time. He was released while waiting for trial, and he was free to continue his crimes. The system had failed again. Meanwhile, Johnny Butkovich's father kept calling the police, over and over, begging them to investigate Gacy. But the police kept dismissing him. They said his son was a runaway. There was no evidence of foul play. The father knew something was wrong. He could feel it. But nobody would listen. More young men disappeared. Some were reported missing. Most were not. Gacy was committing these crimes so frequently now that he was running out of room in his crawl space. Some remains he placed on top of older ones. Some he disposed of in the Des Plaines River. He even considered putting them in his attic, but decided against it. His criminal activity had become routine for him. Just another part of his life. His neighbors started complaining about a terrible smell coming from his house. A thick, bad odor that made people sick. The building manager called Gacy several times. "What is that smell?" Gacy always had an excuse. His freezer broke. His fish tank needed cleaning. Trapped animals died in the walls. People believed him because he was so convincing, so friendly. How could this nice man be hiding something horrible? Then on December 11th, 1978, everything changed. 15-year-old Robert Piest told his mother he was going to talk to a contractor about a summer job. The contractor had come into the pharmacy where Robert worked, offered him twice what the pharmacy paid. Robert's mother waited in the car. She was going to drive him home after his shift. It was her birthday. They had plans to celebrate together. Robert went to meet the contractor. He said he would be back in a few minutes, but he never returned. His mother waited and waited. When he did not come back, she went inside to look for him. He was gone. His co-workers said he had left with a man named John Gacy. Robert's parents immediately called the police. This was different from other cases. Robert was not a runaway. He had a close relationship with his family. He was a good student. He had no reason to disappear. Police took this seriously, especially Lieutenant Joseph Kozenjak. He had a teenage son the same age as Robert. He understood the fear these parents were feeling. Kozenjak investigated Gacy's background. What he found was disturbing. The conviction from Iowa, the pending case with Jeffrey Rignall, a pattern of violence against young men. He knew Robert was in serious danger. He went to Gacy's house immediately. When Gacy answered the door, he seemed calm. Too calm. He denied ever meeting Robert Piest. Said he had been dealing with a family emergency. His uncle had just died. He needed to call his mother. Kozenjak's instincts told him Gacy was lying. But without evidence, he could not arrest him. He asked Gacy to come to the station later to make a formal statement. Gacy agreed. Kozenjak knew he needed more. He applied for a search warrant. It was granted based on Gacy's criminal history and the witness testimony that Robert was last seen going to meet him. When Gacy came to the station that evening, Kozenjak served him the warrant and demanded his house keys. Gacy's reaction was shocking. He became angry, threatened the officers, said he knew important people. He would have their jobs. They had no idea who they were dealing with. This outburst told Kozenjak everything. Gacy was hiding something big. The search of Gacy's house revealed disturbing items: adult materials, restraints, handcuffs, a wooden board with restraints at each end, a device clearly meant for harmful purposes. They also found personal items that did not belong to Gacy: a class ring, clothing too small for him, a jacket similar to what Robert Piest wore. In the kitchen trash, they found something crucial: a receipt from Nissan Pharmacy where Robert worked. Gacy claimed he never met Robert, but here was proof Robert had been in his house. They also discovered a crawl space under the house. When Kozenjak opened the trapdoor, a musty smell hit him, but he saw no sign of Robert. The dirt appeared undisturbed. They left with the evidence they collected. But Kozenjak was not satisfied. He ordered round-the-clock surveillance on Gacy. Then Robert's mother remembered something. The night Robert disappeared, a co-worker had put a photo developing receipt in the pocket of his jacket. Kozenjak rushed to check the evidence. There it was. A receipt from Nissan Pharmacy. He called the pharmacy. The numbers matched perfectly. This was the smoking gun, proof that Robert Piest was in Gacy's home. But Kozenjak still needed more for another search warrant. Amazingly, Gacy gave it to him. The contractor became cocky. He invited the surveillance officers inside his house, offered them coffee, talked about his clown hobby. Then he said something chilling. He told them that a clown can get away with anything. While the officers talked with Gacy, one needed to use the bathroom. When the heater kicked on, a horrible smell came through the vents. Sweet. Bad. Unmistakable. The smell of decomposition. It was coming from under the house. This was all Kozenjak needed. He got a second search warrant. But before they could execute it, Gacy was arrested on an unrelated charge. He had become so reckless that he put illegal substances in a stranger's pocket right in front of police. With Gacy in custody, investigators returned to his house, this time with a full team, and this time they knew where to look. They went straight to the crawl space, started digging in the hard dirt. Almost immediately, they found human remains. Then more, then more. The more they dug, the more they found. It was not just one victim, not just Robert Piest. There were dozens of victims hidden under Gacy's house. The scene was horrific, remains in various states. Some had been there for years, some were recent. Many were placed on top of each other. Lime had been poured on them to speed decomposition and reduce smell, but it was not enough. The evidence of Gacy's crimes had been right under his floor all along. In total, they found 27 victims in and around his house, 26 in the crawl space, 1 under the garage concrete. It was Johnny Butkovich, the young man whose father had begged police to investigate years earlier. If they had listened then, how many lives could have been saved? Confronted with this discovery, Gacy confessed, but he showed no remorse, no emotion. He described the crimes casually, explained his methods like he was discussing a hobby. He admitted to harming Robert Piest and disposing of his remains in the Des Plaines River, said there was no room left under the house. He also confessed to disposing of other victims in the river. How many? He could not remember exactly. Maybe 4, maybe more. He had lost count. Over the next 5 months, police recovered remains from the water. Finally, they found Robert Piest, the boy whose disappearance had brought Gacy's reign of terror to an end. The trial began in 1980. There was no question Gacy committed the crimes. He had confessed. The evidence was overwhelming. The only question was his sanity. If found insane, he could go to a mental hospital, possibly be released someday. But if found sane, he would face the death penalty. The defense argued he must be insane. Who else would commit and hide 33 crimes under their house? But the prosecution showed that Gacy knew exactly what he was doing. He planned carefully. He hid evidence. He lied to police. He chose vulnerable victims who would not be missed. These were not the actions of an insane person. These were the actions of a cold, calculating predator. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. They found him guilty on all 33 counts. Sane at the time of each crime, he was sentenced to death. John Wayne Gacy was executed by lethal injection on May 10, 1994. His last words were defiant. He showed no remorse. Even at the very end, he maintained control, or tried to. This story shows us how dangerous people can hide behind a friendly face, how predators walk among us looking completely normal. John Wayne Gacy fooled everyone because society was not paying attention. Share this story to spread awareness about staying alert. Subscribe to our channel for more true crime stories that teach us important lessons. Always be attentive and aware, because we never know when danger is near us. Together, we can create a safer society by learning from the past.